What if your story wasn't meant to stay private? What if the burden that broke your heart actually became your platform? Well, today's guest didn't influence by chasing followers or going viral on social media. Instead, he built it because the pain he lived through wouldn't let him stay silent. Dr. John DeGarmo didn't launch a business. Instead, he launched a mission, one rooted in foster care, driven by compassion, and built through relentless obedience. And now he set out to make a difference, and the world is choosing to follow. And so my question to you is, what mission is sitting in your story? What mission is waiting for you to run with it? So my friends, sit back, kick back, and let's get started, for this is the School of Influence. The School of Influence, where legends are made and legacies are started. Interviews and insights to grow your impact on social media, networking, and stages. Class is now in session.
We're gonna take on the world.
What made it so that you wanted to say yes to foster care?
Well, I wanted to say no at first. I didn't want to be a foster parent. I had no desire. There's nothing in me that said, I want to be a foster parent. In fact, I would have ran away from it years ago. Got married, moved to Australia, and our first child died of a condition called anencephaly, or some pronounce it anacephaly. It's a condition where the brain and skull doesn't really form, and my wife was in labor for 92 hours.
Dr. John DeGarmo is the founder of the Foster Care Institute, a TEDx speaker, a best-selling author, and a consultant to schools and nonprofits and government. And everywhere that he goes, he brings a message of hope. He brings a message of healing and of the high-impact mission that he's on. All right, welcome to my friend John DeGarmo, Dr. John DeGarmo. One of the things I'd love to be able to talk about, but so good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Thanks. I'm great. Thank you so much.
Good. Well, I want to just kind of kick it right off and dive into this mission that you're on about foster care. What made it so that you wanted to say yes to foster care?
Well, I wanted to say no at first. I didn't want to be a foster parent. I had no desire. There's nothing in me that said, I want to be a foster parent. In fact, I would have ran away from it years ago because I believe those many, many myths and misconceptions that are associated with foster care. Kids are bad kids. Foster parents are weird people. Well, that second one's true. Foster parents are weird people because it's a very different kind of lifestyle. You got to be a little bit odd to care for children in crisis in your home 24 hours a day who have issues of trust, anger, etc. So, my wife is from Australia. We traveled the world singing and dancing in a performing group back in 1990. Got married, moved to Australia, and our first child died of a condition called anencephaly, or some pronounce it anacephaly. It's a condition where the brain and skull doesn't really form. And my wife was in labor for 92 hours. And at that time, as I write in my book, Faith in Foster Care, I turned my back on a lot of things, including my faith, because I thought, how can this be? My wife and I have never done drugs, never done alcohol, I've never drank, never smoked, nothing like that. Yet we had relatives and cousins and new friends who had done that and had healthy children. So I thought the irony is too great. How can this happen to us when we haven't done that? So turned my back on a lot of things, including my faith. And then years later, we moved back to the United States, and we flew into Atlanta, Georgia. And I look back on this and think this was crazy, but we flew into Atlanta. We didn't know anybody, didn't have a car, didn't have a house, didn't have a job, had never been to Georgia, had no friends there. And we came on my wife's faith. Her faith was very deep. And at that time, my dream career job, which did not pan out.
Well, pardon the interruption, but let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your story was meant to impact thousands or millions of lives, but you literally just didn't know where to start? Did you know that there's over 2.9 billion people watching social media every single day? That's literally the biggest stage in the entire world. And yet most people are completely invisible on it. Why? Because they don't know how to tell their story in a way that actually connects to other people. And that, my friends, is exactly why I created Stories to Stages. We help you craft your entire story, professionally edit your video, and then we publish it across all major platforms. Plus, I'm gonna give you access to my entire storytelling bootcamp. This is over $25,000 worth of value, but right now, you can get the entire thing for just $7. $7. Because this isn't just a course, this is a launching pad. We've helped people with no audience, no experience, finally share their story with confidence and to get real reach. Because your story told in the right way involves and moves people. So go to stories2stages.com and grab your $7 spot with the code of podcast1. Your story was not meant to stay silent. So let's get seen, let's get heard, let's get paid, and let's set people free. So go to stories2stages.com, grab your $7 spot, and use the code podcast1 and get yours today. Now, back to the show.
And then I started teaching in a very, very rural school system in middle Georgia at the high school level. And I had a lot of kids coming through my classroom with issues of behavior, issues of attendance, issues of academics. And in addition, I had a senior in my classroom who was pregnant with triplets. And I recognized that neither her nor the father of the kids was in any shape whatsoever to take care of these kids. And I was meeting more and more of these parents. And I recognized, you know what, it really starts in the home. That's why some of these kids are having issues of attendance, et cetera. At the same time, there was in the late 1990s, the largest child sex trafficking ring happening in that small rural county. And I had a lot of those victims in my classroom. The guy who was running it, it's a cult. It was a cult. It's called the Nawabian Nation by Dr. Malachi York. You should look it up later on. Very crazy. Pyramids in the middle of the field. And he was eventually arrested for bringing over 1,000 kids over state lines. So I had a lot of these kids in my classroom. So I went to my wife and said, hey, we lost our first job. We had 3 healthy kids. I've got this senior's pregnant with triplets. What if I brought the babies home? Well, I didn't bring the babies home, but we started taking foster parenting classes. And by that time, my faith had been restored. And then as I started bringing more and more kids in foster care into our home, I thought, how can I help more? How can I help more? And I kept hearing God's voice saying, go out and speak, go out and talk, write a book. And let me tell you, I would have never envisioned what I'm doing now years ago, but to the grace of God. So I feel very strongly every morning that I'm driven every single day to make the foster care system better because it's failed some of my kids. The system has tragically, if you saw my TED Talk, tragically failed some of my kids. And so I wake up in the morning thinking, how can I help more children? And I just feel this is God's calling in my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. And, we share the similarities of, having a mission to help the foster care system and do the things that we've been through. At what point do you feel like you recognize that this was bigger than something you could just do on your own, that you needed to start bringing awareness and training and all those things to it?
Well, my doctor was centered around foster care. And at that time, I wanted to go into school administration. But when I finished my doctorate, I felt, you know what? I really enjoyed the writing process. I want to write a book about foster parenting that doesn't sugarcoat it. And when I finished that first book, within weeks, I got a phone call from someone saying, hey, come speak at our event. And I started ringing some bells. What about the speaking thing? And then I got more and more calls, and I got, and then I started having media call me up, doing interviews, and that led to the Foster Care Institute, which is what I do today. So that was back in 2011 when I wrote that first book, and thought, you know what, maybe there's something beyond it. And again, that was just the hand of God.
Mm. Mm. So for those people that are out there listening and maybe they feel an inclination Do you feel like this was something that you chose to do? Like you were set on, you wanted to do this? Or do you feel like this is maybe something that God assigned you through some of your experience and things that you had gone through, and God said, you know what? You have this, go and take it.
You know, I told you about that dream career job of mine I had when we moved back to the United States in 1997. That's what I wanted to do. And do you know what that was?
Mm-mm.
Professional wrestling.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Yes. I did that for a while. I traveled the South 5, 6 nights a week. At the very, very low level independence. And that's what I wanted to do. When we first moved to the United States, and my faith had not been restored at that point. And then my wife was going through her third pregnancy, and there were some severe complications, and we thought we might lose my wife as well as the baby. So I quit professional wrestling in a heartbeat. And then slightly after that, we became foster parents.
Mm.
And again, that never entered my mind. It never entered my mind to get my doctorate center on foster care. It never entered my mind to write 13 books. It never entered my mind to travel the world speaking on these things. Never. So I really believe that was just God's call.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like, when your influence started, to be able to branch out and to be able to grow, it was really from like a place of heartache, of things that you wanted to do. You wanted to help people. You wanted to help these kids. You wanted to help your family, all those types of things. And, you began to recognize that your voice mattered, whether it be writing the books or doing a TED talk or any of those types of things. It was your voice that was out there. So how did you take that first step of strength of like, okay, I'm going to do this, even though I don't maybe feel qualified or I don't feel right?
Well, it's interesting the experience that led up to it. I said the death of our first child, we had some very, very heartbreaking placements in our home. When you become a foster parent, there's no label, there's no biological, there's no foster, there's no adopted. They become members of our family. And what these children need more than anything else, yes, they need stability. Yes, they need structure. Yes, they need safety. But more than anything else, they need unconditional love. They need us, to love these children so much that when they leave our house and family for whatever reason it might be, and it could be a wonderful reason, still is a time of heartbreak because it's like losing a member of our family. And we've had some kids. My wife and I have experienced 4 failed adoptions. We've adopted 3, but we've faced 4 failed adoptions. And all of those heartbreaks, I believe, prepared me and equipped me to be able to relate to so many other foster parents who are going through the same thing. So when I got that first phone call to speak at an event after my first book was published, I was nervous. But then after I started doing it for a while, I started recognizing that, I've always been a performer at heart. My wife and I met in a performing group, traveled the world singing and dancing. I worked in professional wrestling. Growing up, I had been performing in plays and in choirs, etc. So I've always felt very, very comfortable on stage. So when I'm speaking now and training now, I'm sharing a lot of personal stories of heartache, but also a lot of laughter, a lot of tears. And in the midst of that, there's a lot of learning. And I think that's just the gift that God has given me. But it has happened through those experiences as a foster parent and through a lot of heartbreak. And I'll go up on stage and tell people, you know what? I've struggled. I have wanted to quit. I have cried buckets. I have been angry. I've questioned God. God, why are you doing this to these kids?
Yeah.
At the same time, it's one of the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And every child's made me a better person in some way. And I think that's a message that needs to be out there because when you have 5 million children experiencing domestic violence in their house every single day, that means there's a child in crisis in every single community. I feel if I don't do this, who will?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. We all have that urgency inside of us for something. And, for a lot of us, it's what the experiences we have been through. And, for me, I love the stories aspects of things. And then I believe that every person's story is a seed of transformation that they get to plant into other people. And I use the illustration of, the dandelion, not when it's yellow, but when it's like ready to fly, and somebody standing on stage and blow, and all those seeds go out all over the place. That's what it's like to share your influence and have those seeds planted all over. But you have to make sure that what you're sharing is true. You have to make sure that it resonates with people. You have to make sure that you're meeting people where they're at. So how did you kind of learn that whole aspect of things as you started writing and started speaking?
Well, again, I've always been a storyteller. I've always enjoyed that aspect of it. But then I recognized, and when I was doing a lot of traveling and speaking and meeting foster and adoptive and kinship parents across the country, I recognized, hey, these guys they're had the same pain that I do. They're experiencing the same pain that I do, and they need someone to encourage them. They need someone to inspire them, not only just equip them and give them better skills of foster parenting, but they need someone to say, hey, I hear you. I'm here with you. Let's get through this together. You're not alone. So that's when I started learning. I learned those things as I was initially traveling, that foster parents needed someone to say, I know what you're going through. This does hurt. This is hard. Um, but it's so worth it, so rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And there's a lot of times to where we maybe as speakers or as presenters, we don't resonate with the people. And all you're doing is speaking at the people. And what I hear you saying is that it's important to draw people in, to have a conversation with them, even from stage.
Oh, yeah, I love to engage the audience. I have a few standby jokes that I always use, and I'll find some people in the audience at the very, very beginning, and I'll go up to them in the middle of my presentation and just pat them on the shoulder and share a joke with them. And that just really brings the audience in. When the audience recognizes, I believe, that you're authentic and you're true and you're willing to poke fun at yourself, and have a sense of humility, then they will, along with the storytelling aspect of it, they will much better respond. I've been the presentations where I have been bored out of my skull, and I'm sure you have too. I've also been in presentations where I thought this person has no idea what they're talking about. So I'm very cognizant of that. I don't want my audience to suffer through that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And I agree with you. Stories are the way to go to keep people engaged. So many times people will be engaged with the story, remember the story and the meaning of the story, than they will any of your points, any of your teaching things, because it resonates. It gives an emotional connection that helps them to be able to trigger that response inside of their minds. And so I absolutely love that. As you started to travel and started to do these things, how did you balance the home life, foster care, and traveling and doing all the things that you were getting opportunities to do?
It was exhausting. It was exhausting. But I was able to balance it through a number of things. I needed the support of my wife, my family, a lot of time in prayer, and also self-care. Self-care. Um, because, when you have 11 kids in your house at the same time, which my wife and I did on a couple occasions, but we averaged 9 for about 6 years, and you work full time, both of you work full time. My wife's a doctor of naturopathic medicines. So we're both full on, and you have kids in your house who have issues because of issues of trust, anger management, whatever it might be, and you're traveling on top of that. It can wear you out pretty quickly. So I had to be very, very conscious early on that if I'm going to be successful at this, I need to make sure I'm taking care of not just my family, but myself as well. I'm a big, strong proponent of self care. There's something known as secondary traumatic stress or compassion fatigue. And I love that term, compassion fatigue. Fatigue, exhaustion from compassion, from caring, exhaustion from caring. So when I'm got these kids in my house and I'm suffering the compassion fatigue and I'm speaking on top of that, traveling from airports, etc., I have to have that self-care time. So I will get up early in the morning. I'll have a devotion time and prayer time and do that throughout the day. And then I love the garden. It's very therapeutic for me. And I love to find moments of laughter all throughout the day. Um, so I practice those things so I can keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's good. I totally agree with the self care and something that integrated in this last year more strategically and intentionally is to go out for what I just call a simple mental health walk. Not with my phone, not with anything else, no music, nothing in my ear. I am just simply going out for a walk to reset my body. And it can be draining to be going out and doing the things. Even if you enjoy what you're doing, you're still releasing energy and all those things are happening inside of you. But I also think that, when you're driven by that mission that's inside of you of, if I don't help get the word out, if I don't help share this, people may never know. And so there becomes this like urgency of like, okay, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. As opportunities started coming your way, how did you decipher on what to be able to say yes and what to say no? And how were you then able to balance that with your wife and the kids and, your time with God?
Well, at first it was yes to everything. And then I recognized if I say yes, 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 there's nothing left of me. There's nothing left of me. So I am very conscious of that time as well. You mentioned going for those little meditation walks. On Sundays, I spend 24 hours a day tech free, no phone, no computer. Um, so I'm saying no to that kind of stuff. I also have to recognize that, there are some opportunities presented to me that probably are not a good fit. So I will say no to those. But I will often point them to somebody else. Point them to somebody else. But I do have the family. I do have many children. I do have a wife. So I can't, and I recognize I can't be gone all the time. So I have had to, I don't want to use the word picky, but I've been a little more, um, I've been a little more conscious of the events that I speak at, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And so you got an opportunity to do a TEDx talk. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that come about and how did you prepare and what's it about?
That was great fun. I got the honor of being asked. I learned later on that you've got to apply. But I guess some people saw my presentations because there's lots of videos out there of me speaking at events. And maybe somebody applied for me. I don't know. I don't know. But I got an email saying you've been invited to a TED Talk. And at that time, I'd heard of them, but I never saw one. Never saw one. So I had to watch a lot of TED Talks to prepare myself about, okay, what is this about? And then I learned that there was a time frame. You got to get it in probably within under 18 minutes. And that was the most difficult thing because because when I'm on stage, 6 hours to me feels like 6 minutes. Just by flies by. I'm having so much fun. And there's so much audience engagement and there's so much laughter and emotion and learning. So I recall this quite vividly, for about 3 months straight, every single day, I would get a stopwatch and do my speech and time myself. And I would have to, okay, oh, I got to get 5 more minutes cut. I got to get 4 more minutes cut. I got 3.5 minutes cut. So I would keep cutting and cutting and cutting for 3 months. The TED Talk itself, great fun. I was fifth, and I watched the first four go on, and I recognized that not everybody that does a TED Talk is a professional speaker, and not everybody that TED Talk knows how to keep an audience engaged. I found that out pretty quickly. Um, so I felt very comfortable doing it on stage, and my TED Talk, in a nutshell, was I wanted to share. I believe awareness equals advocacy. Awareness equals advocacy, and I was talking about an issue that was not one that was many people felt comfortable talking about: child abuse, child rape, etc. So I started off a little bit humorous, but I shared a personal story of my own about how the foster care system had failed one of my kids in my house in a horrific fashion. Still haunts me today. And at the end of the talk, there was a call to action. I was telling people that not everybody can be a foster parent, but everybody can help a child in crisis where you live in some way. So I gave some action points, if you will, a call to action. So that was a TED Talk in a nutshell, bringing awareness to children in foster care, bringing awareness to foster parents, bringing awareness to foster care in general, and how everybody has a part to play in helping children in crisis where they live.
Yeah. It's so good. It's so good. And I hope the listeners, I hope you guys are catching that everything that Dr. John is talking about, he's very focused on foster care, very focused on helping the children, very focused on helping the families, all those things. He's not talking about this. He's not going over here. He's not trying to help everybody. He's very focused on the mission that's in front of him. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there that get sidetracked by so many different things. I can help them do this. I can help them do that. I can speak on this. I can speak on that. No, you end up speaking to nobody when you do that. And so if somebody out there feels like they have a story to share, maybe it's a mission or just, their personal story, where would you suggest that they start?
There's a lot of places you could start. You could start with your family. You could start at a church. You could start at a public library. You could start at a Rotary club like Kiwanis or Rotaries or something like that. And of course, you won't be paid for those things, but it's very, very valuable experience and practice. I've spoken to many churches. I've spoken to many Kiwanis and Rotaries and things like that. Um, to start off, my first presentation, first time I was paid to speak was at a library in another state. It was a small little library. They got home my book and said, "Hey, will you come talk about this book?" And that was a small audience. Since then I've spoken in front of thousands and thousands. But I started off small, and I think that's for everybody needs to start off small to get that experience that you need to be sure.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I do. I agree that, you don't need a huge platform to get your message out there. You need to just start. You need to start. Like you said, starting with your family, starting with your friends. Recognize that you're not gonna be as polished as what you think. Uh, it's not gonna look like you think inside of your head as you're presenting, as you're starting out. And so just start where you are. Speak what you've lived and trust that it matters of what you're doing.
Right, right. And there's podcasts, of course, as well. You can practice on sharing your message as well. You can write blogs, all those things to help hone your skill, hone your story, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's good. And the more that we can hone it in and not just learn how to tell a story by speaking it out, by actually practicing to recognize what draws people in. There is an art to storytelling. It's not just standing up there and saying something because you lose people. So what are some of the ways that as you've always been a storyteller, but how did you kind of learn and glean from that?
Through a lot of experience, a lot of practice, I've learned what stories will make them laugh, what stories will make them cry, when to insert that laughter, when to insert those emotional tear-breaking stories, when to insert the learning aspect of it, inflection in voice, pausing, hand gestures, facial gestures, stage movement, all those things are from practice. Um, as I mentioned to you earlier, I was always performing in some way in front of others, so I was able to use all those skills and make myself. It's always felt comfortable on stage, but I had to learn though the storytelling aspect of it when teaching lessons when teaching lessons. Um, so if I'm talking about children who have sleep anxieties in foster care, I might share a funny story beforehand about how my wife and I got no sleep because this child was doing whatever, and then would segue into the lesson. Or when we're talking about adoption, I might share some funny stories about adoption from our family before I segue into that. And at the end of every presentation, I try to leave it with a very, very powerful, heartbreaking story, and then the call to action afterwards.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
I have found when I'm able to break those people's hearts, when their hearts are broken and they think, I didn't know. What can I do? What can I do to help? Well, here's you go. Here's what you can do to help.
Yeah.
Elder foster care, well, there's adoption. I also do a lot of work in human trafficking prevention as well. And sadly, those all combine together for children in crisis. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They do. That emotional close is so important, and a lot of people don't recognize that importance to ending your talk and having that there, and so that you can give people something. You'll have the call to action at the end, but again, they remember that emotional feeling that they felt when that mission got dropped on them of like, wow, I never knew, or I didn't know it was to that severity. Um, so if people are, struggling with knowing how much of their story to share, how would you instruct somebody? Maybe, like in my circumstance, there's things with my son. I want his permission of things to be able to share, but maybe they've gone through some trauma themselves. And how do you guide people on and to how much to share?
Well, to begin with, I don't share all of my personal stories because some of those stories, um, my family doesn't want me to share, quite simply, or it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair for me to share those stories. So I've had to learn what stories to share, what stories not to share. There are some stories, like for example, when I was writing the book Faith in Foster Care, I must have interviewed 150 foster parents across country, and there are some stories that were so profound. I asked them, do I have your permission? People need to hear this story. Can I share it, please? Of course, changing names. So I'd ask permission to share those stories as well. So that's important. That's important to recognize what you can, what you can't, what the audience is wants to hear, and what the audience might not want to hear. You've got to gauge your audience as well. That's why I walk on stage. Well, let me step back a minute. Before I present, I try to scan the room beforehand. Even before people are there, I want to get a walk of the stage, where's the clock, so I can keep an eye on the clock, where are the lights, etc. And then I like to watch the audience come in and see what type of audience I have. Is it an audience that's laughing already? I remember oh, this was a nightmare one. I did a I did a keynote speech for a state. I'm not going to name the state, but I did it for a state, and they had about 6,000 people there. Um, and I was doing the main keynote. The first problem was it was during lunch, and I hate presenting during food time because there's a constant clanging of knives and forks on plates. People are talking, at the table to each other. There's drink, whatever it might be. They're not focused on the presentation; they're focused on the speech. The second problem was it was all foster care for the state, and there was no child care. So, of the 6,000 people there were probably about 3,000 kids screaming and yelling, okay, during the presentation. And the last great part of the speech was I'm trying to do my presentation. There's all this noise going on. There are kids crying and screaming, running up and down the aisles. And a mother brought her young infant right to the front of the stage, placed the child on the stage right in front of my feet, and started changing the diapers. It's like, oh, gosh. So I didn't go back to that. That's one where in the future I said, you know what? Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm unavailable, but let me suggest somebody else for you. Um, that was not much fun. So that was a presentation where I kind of gauged the audience and thought the audience does not need to hear this story. They're not going to hear this story because they're not going to be able to hear it in general. Let's just get through this. Let's just get through it. And then there are sometimes I'm speaking on stage where the audience is so engaged and you can hear a pin drop because they're so focused. And so I think, okay, maybe not a funny story here, maybe just the learning part here. So you got to kind of gauge that audience, how they're feeling.
Yeah, being flexible is definitely something as a speaker you have to learn. I remember one time I walked on the stage and I had prepared the church clap. That's when I almost always walk out to church claps. I get all hyped up. I was planning on starting off with a story as I'm walking on, was swinging my jacket around, and the person in front of me ended up crying at the very end, and then the crowd was crying as they walked off. And I'm like, "That yeah, no, don't that's not an atmosphere shifter that I could walk on and do." And so I had to completely shift as I'm walking out, and I sat on the front of the stage, and I engaged the crowd. I recognized what was happening, and slowly I stood up to be able to start my story aspect of it. But so many people will just, oh no, I'm locked in. I have to do what it is that I prepared, instead of having those stories that you can swap out, having those different things that you can do to read the room. It's so important, and the audience will recognize it as well. And I also do a lot of emceeing, and so to learn how to be able to shift a room semi quickly, that's a skill that a lot of people don't recognize as not easy
No,
whatsoever.
no, I remember I was at an event. Um, it was the second day of event. I had spoken the first day. I was just there for the second day. I think I was selling books and stuff like that. And I was going to speak in the third day. And I was having lunch. Um, and the organizer came up to me and said, "Hey, the person who's going to show up didn't show up. Can you go give a presentation?" I said, "Sure, of course." When they said, "In 5 minutes." So I walked, as I'm walking on the stage, I'm thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going? And my mind was about 10 seconds faster than my words coming out. Because the entire time I'm speaking, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? Yes. But you know what? That was a great experience. That was a great experience because I learned a lot from that.
Absolutely. Yeah, you learn to be quick, but, it's also a testament about that we should be always prepared at any time. And if we're operating out of a place of overflow, we'll always have something that we wanna be able to share. We'll always have something that's fresh on our mind, and I believe that the more that we pour out, the more that God's gonna give us to be able to reveal more, the deeper that we get to go with things. Um, I'd love to ask you a couple quick questions. What's your favorite topic? What's your favorite thing in your sphere of influence that you love to talk about?
Right now is compassion fatigue. So many people right now are suffering since the lockdowns of 2020. Since the lockdowns of 2020, so many people are suffering. I must tell journalists every single day that the real pandemic I feel, it's not a virus, it's mental health. We're in a mental health crisis, and our children are suffering the most right now. Yeah, we've seen a huge increase since the lockdowns in teenage suicide attempts, child depression, anxiety, obesity, addictions, all these things. And a lot of carers, foster parents, and parents in general aren't really equipped to handle these new mental health challenges. And as they try to do that, they're getting burned out. They're getting worn down. So that's probably my favorite topic is that compassion fatigue one, because it's one right now that so many can relate to in our society in some way. Whether it is a parent, whether it's a foster parent, adoptive parent, or it might be somebody at work who's really suffering from it. It might be teachers who are suffering from that right now. I just did a session, a 6 hour session for teachers in Ohio on something very similar to that topic, because teachers are right now are burned out too with these kids coming in the classroom who have so many needs, and anxiety is such a high right now. So that's probably the topic I'm enjoying the most right now is that compassion fatigue.
Yeah. All right. So next thing is, what's your favorite way of um, creating things to give out to people? So whether it be books, your curriculum, speaking, what's your favorite way of releasing it?
All of the above. I like to do it through a lot. I have with the foster care institute, we have over 80 hours of online training webinars. I did 4 years of a podcast. I and my 13th book is coming out. I'm always on other people's podcasts as well. I write lots of articles for various publications. So it's a variety of ways I do it.
Mhm. How do you compartmentalize? Do you sit and write on a certain subject, and then do you make that into all different types of platforms? Do you start with a talk, turn it into a book? How does that thought process go for you?
Usually the book comes first. And when I'm writing a book, I will do a very, very brief outline of the book. And then when the outline is done, then tell myself, I must write 2 pages a day at a minimum 7 days a week.
Mm,
Because if I say, you know what, I'm going to put it off tomorrow. I'm going to put it off next week. I'm only going to do half page today. I'll catch a rush tomorrow. The book won't get done. But if I do 2 pages at a minimum over 3 months, that's 180 pages. That's a good sized book right there.
Mhm.
And then from the book, um, then articles might be pulled from the book. And then speeches and topics might be taken from that book as well.
Got it. So the book is kinda your foundation where you get to do your studying and collect all the information, put it all together in a book, and kinda build different things from there. That's good.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it is, or if I'm creating a webinar for an agency on a topic I really don't know much about, I do heavy, heavy research on that topic. And I'll spend days researching, I'll spend weeks researching the topic, an hour to a day, just familiarizing myself completely with the topic before I even begin to create a webinar on it. So there's a couple different ways I do it.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. What would you say is one of the hardest things about being a person of influence on stage and leading foster care, leading your foster home, leading your family? What would you say are some of the or one of the hardest things that you come up against?
The stories I share and the stories I experience are grim stories. Something else I do as part of my career is I'm an expert witness for legal firms, which means attorneys will hire me on cases revolving usually a child being raped, a child being murdered, a child dying, usually in a foster care adoption type setting, um, because I'm an expert in this field. And again, they're such grim stories. The stories we've had with our own kids sometimes are heartbreaking. And then when I was talking to other foster parents and hearing their stories, they're grim and heartbreaking as well. So that to me is, and then add the travel on top of that. There are some times where I'm just completely worn down emotionally, and which wears me down physically, and sometimes worn down spiritually. There are times I question God. God, how can this happen to a child? Where is the justice in this? Where's justice for this child? So that's for me. That's probably the hardest part. That no time off, if you will, from so when I do take time off, I really embrace it. I really embrace it.
Mhm, mhm. If people are, this is the first time them hearing about some of the things with foster care, hearing about some of the things happening with kids and things like that, where do you tend to send people, or how do people get involved in something like this?
Well, usually I send them to the foster care state on my website, which I kind of call a one-stop shop for all things foster care, if you will. Videos, articles, blogs, webinars, you name it, it's all there. I often encourage them also to contact their local child welfare agency, maybe contact a foster care agency, whether it's private, faith-based, or state, depending upon their level of interest or where their heart lies. I might introduce them to other people as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good. As you've continued to grow and, speaking and writing, are there ways that you help people do similar things to what you do?
Yes, yes, particularly during the lockdowns when there wasn't many speaking opportunities out there because as you know, they come to show. I remember, boy, 2020 was going to be my busiest year yet. My calendar was packed, and then I got a phone call early April. Dr. John, we got to cancel the event. What? And then another another phone call, another that, and in the course of a week, I had 4 cancellations. I thought, oh, something is going on here that I was not prepared for. So I had to switch. I had to pivot. How do I keep the income coming in? How do I continue to feed my family? So I pivoted and started doing a lot of online work, um, doing a lot of online webinars. But I also people started asking me, "Hey, how do I be an author? How can I be a professional speaker?" So I started coaching people. I started coaching people on how to successfully write a book and become a successful author, because writing a book is the easy part. The hard part is selling the book, because you got 10,000 new authors every single year through Amazon, if you will. Your average author's lucky to sell about 100 copies of a book, so they never break even. Um, so I started coaching people on how to become a successful author and how to become a successful speaker, how to develop those skills, how to get booked, how to use the media, how to use to hone your skills and to get your name out there, so to speak. So I don't do it as much anymore. If somebody is interested in it, I will have some discussions to see if how serious is this person and what is because when I do it, I make a year-long commitment. It's a 12-month coaching program. So I need to make sure that I have the time to do it, and how interested is this person in truly doing it. And I've enjoyed that because I have seen a lot of my previous clients go on to become very successful authors, very successful speakers. And I've had some of my clients team up to write books together or team up to do speaking engagements together because I've introduced them, that was very rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. I love that you're doing that and that, you've seen success in doing that. Do you feel like in order to start, do you feel like somebody has to be an expert in order to be effective?
No, 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 no. It certainly helps. The expert part opens up a lot of doors, I have found. But if you have a story that people want to hear, then I say, what's stopping you? What's stopping you? I don't know where to start. Well, here's how to start. Here's how to start. But no, you don't have to be an expert at all. I don't believe so.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. You don't have to be an expert to be effective. The biggest thing is that you just need to be willing. You need to be willing to take that step and to start.
Right. Taking that leap, if you will, that leap, that first step forward. First step forward.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So if people wanted to find you, where can people follow up? Where can people watch you? The website, we'll have all the links in there, but you want to tell us for the listeners of where they can find you at?
Sure. Thanks for asking. So if you do a search online for Dr. John DeGarmo or foster care expert, it'll show up. You can go to my website, the Foster Care Institute there. I'm on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. It's all there. And you can find my books, my TED Talk, etc. there as well on my website.
Yeah, highly recommend going and checking him out. Follow him. We've talked a lot of times here on the School of Influence that, there's a lot of times people don't necessarily want to invest into something. Maybe it's not, what up your alley, but you can always go. You can always subscribe. You can always follow. You can share people's posts. It's free. It's there. There's always something that we can glean from somebody else. And so with that, what is one thing that if you had the listeners walk away with one thing from our conversation today, what would you want that one thing to be?
Well, my one thing would be, and this might not be a very feel-good moment, but my one thing would be, when we have so many children right now suffering in our nation from a variety of things, everybody can play a part in some way because there's a child in crisis in every single community, which means, as you and I are having this conversation, and as people are listening, that means right this very minute, probably within a mile of all of us, there's a child out there right now crying out, somebody please help me. And you don't have to be a foster parent, you don't have to be an adoptive parent, but there are so many ways that we can help these kids in some way right where we live. There's a mission field in every single community in the United States. So that would be my message. I love the starfish story. I'm sure you're familiar with the starfish story, and that's how I feel. If it's just one, that makes all the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And it is. And hopefully, each of you listeners out there, each of you that's watching this, recognize that your story has power, that the pain, the things that you've gone through in your life or that you've seen with other people, it might be just the platform that launches your mission. And so recognize that there's power in that. Recognize that influence follows the obedience to actually go out and to actually go out there and do it. There's no other way around it for you to have influence. Just like John, he didn't chase influence. Instead, he followed what the mission was inside of him. And then the influence started to follow him. And so for the entrepreneurs, for anybody out there that's listening, even a parent that maybe doesn't want to be speaking or any of those things, recognize that your influence does matter. It starts inside of your home. And Dr. John, you have shared that. You shared that with your heart and the way that you continue to do the foster care, the way that you continue to serve your family, the way that you continue to serve God first and foremost. And so I just wanted to thank you for being a guest on here. And for any of the listeners out there, drop in the comments, just thank him and jump onto his links and follow him there. But for today, school is dismissed, but your influence never takes a day off. So stay bold, stay focused, and go and leave your legacy. Thanks, Dr. John. See you guys.
Thank you.